This is the Benefits Buzz Podcast, your weekly pulse on what's happening in the world of employee benefits. Brought to you by your friends at WEX, who believe in simplifying benefits for everyone. Now listen up and let's get buzzed. Hey everyone, it's another episode of Benefits Buzz. I'm your host, Eric Pilla, and I'm joined by my co-host, Hayden Goethe. Hayden, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You're doing a stellar job filling in for Kelsey Burgad, who I know is enjoying her FMLA time right now, but you're kind of in the groove, man. I love it.
I think I've matched her level of inquisitiveness and question asking. Whether I've really reached that level in terms of snark or giving you a hard time, I don't know. It's a pretty high bar. But
she's gonna love to hear that. She's gonna love to hear that when she listens to these. It really
Still
is.
Thinking of you, Kelsey.
Well, we've been having a lot of fun diving into season 5 and talking through a lot of great topics. And this one, again, we've got a stellar lineup. I'm really pumped with what we've chosen this year. And we got we asked a lot of our HR professionals at WEX, what do you want to hear about? And this one bubbled to the top, and I'm super pumped to talk through it. We had a running joke here at WEX that open enrollment, it was so funny when I say the word open enrollment, either like a shiver runs through HR professional spines or they get really excited. One of the two, depending on how it goes at their
organization. The adrenaline running, right?
Yeah, exactly. When I say that word, we kind of joke, it's kind of the most wonderful time of the year, at WEX. I'm not sure everyone shares that sentiment, but I always get a good smile out of it. And the funny thing about open enrollment is it always feels like it's this one big, large event we're all working towards, and which is probably true. But one of the things that we really talked about is, even though it is, right, it's this, kind of this window at the end of the year typically, how do we make sure that we don't lose the focus of open enrollment and that we keep the energy and that we keep really the education and the importance of open enrollment going all year long, right? Like we call it long-term open enrollment communications. How do we make sure we keep that importance so it's always top of mind and it doesn't feel so seasonal, right? And so I'm pumped to jump into this. How can we keep your attention? What things can we do to make sure open enrollment feels great all year long? And to do that, we have a fantastic guest. I'm really, really pumped to introduce Steve Carroll. He's our Senior Vice President of Client Services Implementation at Benefit Express, which is a WEX company. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're pumped to have you. We're pumped to talk about this topic. It's something I can't believe after 5 seasons we've never had an episode on. And by golly, we're ready to dive right into it. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about, let's do a little pushback. Why should I be thinking about a long-term communication plan when it comes to open enrollment? Steve?
No, you bet. I mean, a lot of people think about open enrollment just as, something that happens in the fourth quarter, but really, clients are successful at it. It's a full year campaign, right? So as soon as enrollment finishes, it really starts again. It starts up in January. So it's really important to stay engaged with your employees, associates, participants throughout the year, not only sharing things about open enrollment, but also about your benefit design.
And in terms of stretching this out, because again, this is that pivotal moment on the year for HR professionals, is open enrollment, right? But, when you talk about looking at it as a big picture thing, like a long-term thing instead of a short-term thing, what are the biggest benefits or differences that both employers and employees see in really stretching out open enrollment beyond just that window of okay, we have a plan that starts Jan 1, open enrollment's early November. What's the benefit of really stretching that timeline out for those two audiences?
Yeah, good question. I think as I consult with clients and talk about their strategy for open enrollment, what we would like to recommend is engage them each month throughout the year, right? There's different things happening through each month. Everyone probably just received, during tax season, you're getting your Affordable Care Act notices in the mail. What are those things? Inform them what it is and what to do with it. So I'm not calling you asking questions about it and impacting your staff. As we get into March here, it's big FSA season. Why is it big FSA season? Well, your accounts for rollovers and things like that are starting to expire. Now we've got some extensions this year that are due to COVID, but it's just educating them on how to use your FSA, your HSA. What's this all about? You've got some really experienced users, you got some novice users. So getting out that communication to them each month of the year about what's happening. So usually get through that first quarter of the year. I like to say, okay, you're kind of through the educational, you just enrolled, you've got your accounts, you got to do these things. But now it's you get into the second quarter of spring, things die off a little bit. Now's a good time to educate them on maybe some voluntary benefit plans that you have. Educate them on things that they have that they might not know about. Maybe there's a insurance plan they have, or something through Cashable, or somebody who you can do a loan through. So educating them on benefits that aren't the medical and dental and the vision plans or your spending account plans, or more of the smaller unknown plans, and educate them and have them enroll and encourage them. And I think
So a lot of it.
Yep, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, and I think as you get later in the summer, like everyone takes vacation, so not many people check things. What should you be telling them? Hey, how do I use your benefits? So if you're overseas or if you're in another state and you need an emergency happens, educate them on how to actually use the benefits you do have. I think is very important as well.
Yeah, I was just thinking, this kind of brought to mind just an analogy as we talk about this. If any of you have ever taken like a secondary language course, like I took Spanish, in high school, and some of it is just like trying to keep this stuff top of mind, right? Like constantly throughout the year. When I was thinking about took Spanish, you get into the summer and you wouldn't talk that language for 3 months. And then all of a sudden you have to jump back into it again once the school year starts and you're trying to play catch up again. I mean, is that kind of what we're thinking about here, Steve? Is just like keeping these benefits top of mind for employees so that they do stay more engaged and they're more likely to participate every year?
Yeah, it is. I think it's twofold. I think one, it's keeping them engaged, like you said, but I think some clients who don't have a communication strategy, they're trying to jam pack all that in like 1 week's time. And like all of us, we're super busy, got stuff going on at work, outside of work. You get those emails, hey, I'm going to come back to it and read it. And oftentimes you don't come back to read it until it's like, the day before. And it's rushed, right? So you're not making educated decisions. You're having a bad experience because you're not educated, and then it trickles down to your benefits. It trickles down to your job, right? I'm stressed about my benefits. I'm stressed about my job. My performance at work, could show that, and we've seen that happen.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And also, Hayden, I'm gonna start testing you on your Spanish moving forward in some
High school was a long time ago, Eric. It's only gotten worse.
I don't care, man. When you give me ammunition, I'm gonna use it. So be wary. Steve, this makes total sense, right? I mean, I totally get this, and I'm sure there's a lot of HR pros that are nodding their head. I'm like, yes, I don't, I don't have time for this, or I've always wanted to do this. I don't do it. When we had our large campaign around HSA Day, one of the things we talked about is the big challenge is on average, people spend 18 minutes choosing their benefits, right? Like it takes that long to make a pizza, or I spend more time like choosing my next Netflix show to binge watch, right? So it makes sense that if we can get people to pay more attention to the importance of their open enrollments, besides that small teeny window in Q4, right through these communications, it makes so much sense. So I think you've totally sold me, and I think you've sold a lot of people. So let's get to maybe brass tacks about what steps should people be thinking about before they create their long-term comp plan? Like what things should be top of mind when they go into creating, maybe it's a calendar, maybe it's a goal, whatever it might be. What's some of your tips for doing so?
Yeah, I think the key there is just, what's your goals, right? Is it grounded on what are we going to measure ourselves on and know if we're successful, right? It could be, access to, a benefit platform, right? It could be access to better communication. It could just be more education on your benefits. There's lots of different angles you can go. And depending where you're at in the process, if you've had a plan for a long time, you tweak your goals. Hey, this year we're going to maybe focus on directing folks to reimbursement accounts, right? If you're new to the plan, it's like, it might be education. Okay. We've got so many things to cover, right? And what we covered maybe 2-3 years ago might be different than what we're focused on now, like EAP and wellness and time off are actually more critical now than they were 2 or 3 years ago. Those benefits were always there. People didn't always know they were there. Right now, I think with all the challenges we've had last couple of years, they're just more important than ever. So I think, hey, that's your good focus for this year. Be, hey, let's educate people on those things, right? Because you don't always use them, or you use them and you didn't know you had them, right? So that's where I think is key, is just what's my goals, what's my focus, and then building a plan around it. And I think no matter what your plan is, you should have some education. Like I'm a big advocate of, there's always something you can communicate each month of the year. Like have a short message, a communication, not weekly, but monthly around, hey, what's the topic for the month? I think that's key. And then tweaking it each year.
Yeah, you just took my next question, which was, I like that, right? Goal setting. What do you want to accomplish? And I love, like, have a pulse. What's happening right now, right? Like you're right. Benefits are being used differently than they were a year and a half, 2 years ago. And so be top of mind of that, right? What plans that you want to make sure and percolate up so they know, hey, you've got these. And I love the education piece, all of it. My next question was going to be, what's the cadence? When do I start, right? Like now that I know my goals, like how often do I do this? You said monthly, but when does it start? Does it start like, a couple months into the new year. We just did an episode on our first episode of the season was, I've got a new benefits. Now what do I do, right? How do I use them? So, I would love to hear your thoughts on what does that kind of pattern look like, and what is the timing around the communication plan? Maybe
It's funny you say that. It's like we were saying at the beginning, it's like open enrollment's here. It's say November when most commonly folks have enrollment, and then you send out your files, your payroll files, your carrier files, you get those things done. Like everyone exhales, okay, it's over. It's never really over, right? You kind of start up again. You hit January, you hit the new year, and everyone get their ID card, and everyone's paychecks come out right, and everyone exhales again. But you gotta keep the momentum going. Hey, like to your point, I got these new benefits. How do I use them? It should never stop. That plan should go each month throughout the year, like educating them on what's happening through the various trends of the year. So it never stops, really. You just got to keep going. If you stop, you kind of fall behind the 8 ball, right? You got to catch up. Or the other thing that we see is that if you don't educate, a lot of employers have call centers, or the big employers or small employers are calling their HR staff with questions, and that education campaign helps minimize those calls that they're getting. It helps reduce their time, because it takes a lot of time. People call, you got to answer the questions, you do some follow-up. But it's also a good vehicle to find out what people are asking about to kind of build it if you don't have a plan, right? So it's good and bad, but I think the better the plan you have, the more informed and educated your employees will be.
What are some recommendations you have for early, like in a plan year again? And I'm kind of talking about plan year as if it was like January to December, but we've seen, just from some of our data, like really participant engagement in a lot of ways really seems to peak in like, February or March, especially for those, who have, maybe they're either like looking at the new plans they just signed up for, or they might have like a flexible spending account and their grace period's about to expire. And then things can kind of like drop off. Like, are there any recommendations for early in the plan year, like, especially like March, April, May type of messaging that you would suggest?
Yeah, I think you hit on the head. I think, reimbursements always stands out. Like in our typical plan years, you have an FSA plan, the rollovers and stuff expire at the end of March. Those are now extended with the new legislation that's out there temporarily. But I think even if they are extended, I think it's just educating them on, hey, how do you use your account? Like you got, again, a lot of novice users, new people into the workforce who don't have an FSA, right? I now have one. How do I use it? How do I file a claim? What are some legit expenses I can get auto reimbursed through my debit card? So I think education is critical in those spending accounts, because people put money into them. Now, hey, let's use them, because they don't want to forfeit their money at the end of the year, right? So I'd hit with that as number one. And I'd kind of back up a little bit. Is how do I use my medical plan, right? So if you're a client and you switch from maybe, a different medical carrier or a drug carrier, I think there's some education on how do I access their site? How do I file a claim? How does it all work, right? So I think education on what makes your employee's life easier is what I would kind of focus on that first part of the year.
Do you have any thoughts on, when and what type of, questions you might ask if you were to do like a survey of your employees, just to see like what kind of content or topics they would, maybe want to hear more about from the employer?
Yeah, that's a good one. I know oftentimes we do open enrollment, like as we do administration, we can kind of get a pulse on who's enrolled, who hasn't enrolled, and maybe any noise you get through call center or just noise in general. Maybe there's a communication that went out. What's the buzz on the floor? And our first big thing is, hey, enrollment's complete. How did it go, right? What was the participant experience, right? So I can educate, I can communicate, but what was that participant experience, right? We often say in benefits, no news is good news, because if there's no one, it's quiet. Things happen like they should. And that's what you want to have happen. You also love, hey, it went really well. The site was great and things got through it great. And we get that a lot, but no news is good news. It's quiet. Like it's always, hey, it's quiet. What's going on? So that participant experience is really good. How did it go? Was the site easy to navigate? Were things clear and easy to read? Was things communicated ahead of time? Did you understand what you had going into it? So that's what I would focus on after you kind of get through enrollment, is how was the experience, and then get into maybe later in the year, hey, how are the plans, right? If the benefits kind of meeting up to your expectations, right? And then is what else are you not getting that you want to hear about? And that's what I think we talked about earlier, is those voluntary plans, those EAP plans, those wellness plans, some of the non-core benefit plans. I think that's where the education comes in, is, hey, did you know we had this EAP plan? Hey, did you know you have time off? You have a parent who's sick you need to take care of. Like those things are kind of buried sometimes in the benefit guides and not highlighted in those communications. So kind of extracting those out and educating and informing them is a good way to go.
Yeah, great suggestion, Steve. I'm also thinking about, because I'm a participant and we do a decent job here, but I also love to ignore emails. And,
Yep.
sometimes, again, if it's not open enrollment season, I've somehow been trained to not pay attention because, benefit, they got me, right? I only need it when I need it. So how do you get their attention? Like, how do you make sure the content that you're sending is going to resonate? Love your suggestions there for those that are struggling to get that inbox and mind share.
Yep. Yeah, great question. We get that a lot from our clients. Like, there's so many things now. Like, even at work, you got your monitors, you get your instant message, you got phone calls. Like, how do you keep it all, track of it all? It's the same thing with communication. Employers got email, they've got texting now that we're leveraging as well. You've got paper communications, but I think one of my favorites to do is, we get them every time. Everyone checks their mail, right? Is postcards. Everyone goes to the mailbox, you grab your mail, and as you walk back or walk in the house, you're kind of thumbing through your mail. And if it's in a sealed envelope, you got to rip it open to look at it. And sometimes junk mail, you rip it in half and throw it away. A postcard, as you throw it away, sometimes you're kind of reading the front and back, and it grabs your attention. And I think it's a quick and easy way, cheap way to actually grab attention for your employees, get key messages out, and get their attention. Because that's the thing, is you can communicate all you want, but if people aren't reading it and digesting it, kind of goes for naught, right? So that's a challenge. How do you get your attention with competing? Everyone's got their personal mail, their work email, text, social media. There's this information overload. So I wouldn't go crazy with it. I think I'm a big fan of like a postcard to get some attention throughout the year, and then kind of maybe build that off of what your campaign is for the year, and then kind of hit them once a month, every 4, 5, 6 weeks with a general plan or a message, kind of back to your goals of what you want to accomplish, and have those communications kind of build off of that.
Do you think anything needs to change in terms of approach, like right when you get to that moment of open enrollment? Like, do you have any suggestions in terms of like, okay, now we're finally here, where should we go?
No, good one. I think, and some clients, sometimes it's budget. They can't afford to do a full year campaign, or they don't have the staff to do it, right? It takes work to be successful at it. So if you don't, that's okay. I think, the world isn't going to crash on you. I think you can still kind of make it work for yourself. So I'd say like a month before open enrollment starts, you want to get the word out that, hey, open enrollment's coming in your dates. Because what a lot of employers forget about is you've got, if you have have a spouse or a loved one who works as well, you want to maybe coordinate your open enrollment periods, because maybe you can look at both benefits and maximize your benefit potential. So if my spouse had benefits, we might say, hey, let's go through and do the math. So kind of coordinate enrollment periods. So, hey, get the word out, get prepared, and maybe tell people, here's some things you should think about before the big day, right? And then as you get closer, reminders, right? People forget, oh my gosh, I forgot open enrollment's coming. Just give them like that 2-week notice. And then I say, as you get to enrollment, do the 1 week before, and then, during, hey, just reminders, if you haven't enrolled yet, just get out there. Here's your last day. So that's what I would do to kind of, those things are pretty easy. And we have capabilities in our system that help clients send out communications. We drive those things and help them be successful. They review the scripts, we punch them in, and we punch them out, and let them know what the response rates are.
Yeah, I was just going to say, then see, once you put the fruits of your labor, how are your participants responding, right? How are your employees engaging with the comms that you're doing, and how do you tweak and learn and do it? And I love that. I love all these suggestions. Steve, this has been fantastic, but I know we missed something, and I always want to give our guests an opportunity to share something that we just didn't probe enough on. So if you have any other any last final nugget of wisdom or tip that you would give HR pros who maybe are considering, engaging in a long-term open enrollment comm plan, starting in 2022, or maybe would want to tweak the one that they already have. Any final advice?
I think the key is just, what's your goals for the year? Like we all want to do, and you can't boil the ocean every time. So like, just keep it specific. What are 2 or 3 things I want to try to either educate or communicate to my participants, right? And then look at, hey, how do I measure it? How the programs I have in place, how are they doing, right? And those are some key things I say that are easier to do than you think, right? So you probably have 2 or 3 goals. How do I take them to put to action? Or just pick one. If you can do a thing, pick one thing, what I want to do, and make it happen. And here at WEX, we've got the tools and stuff to help you with that stuff as well. So that's my advice. Just pick something. Don't let everything overwhelm you, and just pick 1 or 2 things and run with it.
That's great advice. And yeah, so we're super proud of the work that we do in this space. And I we'd be guilty of not sharing that. That's something really important to us too. And I think if anything, I love the advice of, like I said, you don't need to boil the ocean. If this is your first time going into a long-term open enrollment plan, choose that one thing you want to try and move the needle on, right? And focus a plan on that, and build some comms around that, and then see if you find success, and then iterate. So I love that advice. Baby steps is always good, especially when we know how inundated HR pros are with everything that's happening in their world right now. So Steve, you've been a fantastic guest. Thanks so much for joining us. We love the advice, and hopefully we can have you on the show again sometime in the future.
You bet, guys. You guys are great hosts. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
Absolutely. Take care, Steve.
Take care.
WEX is in the business of simplifying benefits for everyone. Now, although we certainly hope our podcast sparks some aha moments, like that was pretty cool, but of course we cannot provide legal, investment, or financial advice. And, well, therefore, nothing shared in this podcast should be interpreted as such. We encourage you to seek out appropriate professional advice regarding your plans. Hey, congratulations! You made it through our disclaimer. Thanks for listening.